Hello, my name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions.
And I'm Proven Paradox, a guy with a lot of questions.
And you're listening to Bright on Buddhism, a podcast where we discuss East Asian Buddhism, answering listener-submitted questions from listeners just like you, and introducing concepts of Buddhism that you may or may not be familiar with in a casual, conversational setting. Enjoy.
Here, are there any female Buddhas? I know we have spoken before about how it is said that people in women's bodies cannot be reborn as a Bodhisattva or a Buddha, but we have also spoken about how that rule is very human, mundane, and dualistic, potentially not held by the Buddhas themselves.
Yes, right you are. One that immediately comes to mind is Tārā, representative of feminine compassion, healing, and salvation. After being told she could not be reborn as a Buddha in her female body, she resolved instead to do just that, and has been reborn as a female Buddha ever since.
What are some of her characteristics?
She's said to have as many as 22 forms that she manifests as to save sentient beings. There's green Tārā, who is peaceful and enlightened, but then there is also red Tārā, who subjugates defilements, or white Tārā, the Tārā of wisdom, and many more.
Fascinating. As we've said before, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas arise in many forms to suit the needs of the beings they are saving.
Indeed.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Bright on Buddhism. This week, we will be discussing the female Buddha known as Tārā. Who is Tārā? What are some stories about her? How is she depicted in iconography and why? We hope you enjoy. So let's get started. Who is Tārā?
Tārā is a key figure in Vajrayana and Mahayana Buddhism. Her name in Sanskrit is Tārā, and then in Tibetan, she is called Dolma, and in Chinese, Duolo Pusa, or Dumu, and in Japanese, she's also called Tārā. Her name means Venerable Mother of Liberation. In Sanskrit, it's a derivation of the root tr, which means to cause to cross over, or to rescue. In Indian and Tibetan Buddhism, she's considered a fully realized Buddha, but in East Asian Buddhism, she's understood to be a Bodhisattva. However, this categorization is not particularly important. We've discussed in depth that the distinction between Bodhisattvas and Buddhas in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism is practically irrelevant. According to records and evidence from Nalanda, the Indian Buddhist center of learning we've mentioned before, Tārā began to be worshipped on a wider scale in India in the 6th century Common Era. She seems to have been initially regarded as a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara's compassion in its aspect as a feminine, motherly care. And as a result, Tārā statues or icons often appear in a triad with Avalokiteshvara and Brikruti, who you remember from the previous episode. Brikruti is a historical figure, the Nepali wife of the Tibetan king who spread Buddhism across the lands of Tibet in the 6th century. The pair came to be regarded as bodhisattvas and as incarnations of Avalokiteshvara posthumously. In that sense, Tārā becomes grouped together with them as manifestations of compassion. This pairing is rather interesting to me because of the gendered aspect around it. To begin with, Avalokiteshvara changes genders frequently in history. He's referred to as a he in Indian and Tibetan Buddhism, as a she in Chinese Buddhism, and as genderless in Japanese Buddhism. The doctrine behind that is that Avalokiteshvara has the ability to appear in the world in whatever form is necessary to save a sentient being in that very moment and context. However, before Avalokiteshvara's first gender change occurred historically, Tārā appears as a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara's mother-like compassion and femininity, taking on a character very similar to Mother Mary in Christianity. When worship of Avalokiteshvara later proliferates in China and the rest of East Asia, he turns into a female figure, Guan Yin. Yet worship of Tārā carried over as well. This all shows how complicated iconography and worship was as Buddhism spread between different cultures with different languages, indigenous religious traditions, and historical contexts. The first textual reference to Tārā comes in a text that we have not read on this show before, called the Manjushri Mulakalpa, or the Noble Root Manual of the Rites of Manjushri, a Mahayana Sutra and a Mantrayana ritual manual describing rituals pertinent to worship of the Bodhisattva Manjushri. This text gives her the title and attribution of the noble goddess who is the compassion of Avalokiteshvara. The Manjushri Mulakalpa straddles the line between Mahayana, Vajrayana, and Tantra, and thus has influence in Buddhism and outside of it. The text claims that Buddhists can practice the tantras related to Shiva, Garuda, and Vaishnava because Manjushri was said to have created those practices and rituals as well. All three of those are Hindu deities, each with tantric practices related to them. The text doesn't prescribe any tantras related to Tārā, but by influencing Shaktism and Shaivism, it inserts Tārā into their cosmologies as well. Thus, Tārā is worshipped in Shaktism and Shaivism, each a school of Hinduism. Shaktism is the worship of Shakti, the divine feminine energy into which Mahadevi, or the great goddess, is personified. Shaivism is the worship of Shiva, the god of destruction, in Hinduism. In other traditions, Tārā is thought to be a manifestation of Durga, the personification of goddesshood in Hinduism. In more concrete terms, Durga is the personification of Shakti, the divine feminine, and she could also be called the Mahadevi, or the great goddess. All other goddesses manifest from her, such as Kali, the war goddess, or the Tridevi, the three consorts of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. In this sense, Tārā would be the manifestation of the soft and compassionate side of Durga's femininity. Tārā was a very popular deity whose worship spread all over South and Southeast Asia, with icons of her being discovered as far away from India as Indonesia. Tārā is said to have a pure land of her own, described as, quote, covered with manifold trees and creepers, resounding with the sound of many birds, and with the murmur of waterfalls, thronged with wild beasts of many kinds. Many species of flower grow everywhere. Unquote. Tara's Pure Land is thought by some to be contained within Sukhavati, the Pure Land of Amida. In worship, she is thought to be a protector against the 8 fears and 8 dangers, or the Astabhaya and the Astagora, respectively. The 8 dangers are 1. Drowning, 2. Thieves, 3. Lions, 4. Snakes, 5. Fire, 6. Threatening spirits, 7. Imprisonment, and 8. Elephants. And the 8 fears are fear of each of these dangers. In other versions of the list, the 8 are lions, elephants, fire, snakes, robbers, waters, infectious diseases, and demons. In the texts that depict her in this way, readers are given mantras and dharanis to summon and invoke her to save them from these situations. Though she's a protector deity that defeats all these dangers, she is also thought to be very playful and even plays pranks on people who disregard or look down upon the power and significance of the feminine.
What are some stories about Tārā?
There are a variety of origin stories that depict how she came to be or how she became a bodhisattva. In one myth, she is said to have formed out of the tears that Avalokiteshvara cried upon hearing or seeing the suffering of all sentient beings. When Avalokiteshvara cried, his tears formed a lotus throne, and she sprang up out of it fully formed, similar to how Pure Land Buddhists describe rebirth in a Pure Land. To review, when somebody is reborn into Amida's Pure Land, they are born into a lotus flower that has either fully opened up or remains partially or completely closed. Depending on how morally good they were in their lifetimes, that lotus opens up almost immediately or it remains closed for many eons. This origin myth could be related to her connection to Amida that we described earlier in the episode. In another myth, Tārā was originally a human in a world system far away from ours, millions of eons in the past. She was called Jana Chandra, or Yeshe Dawa. In that world, she spent kalpa after kalpa making offerings and praying to the Buddha of that world, who was called Tonyo Drupa. In return, Tonyo Drupa instructs her on bodhicitta, raising the mind to become a bodhisattva. Soon after, some male monks approach Tārā and tell her that she should pray to be born as a male in the next life, so that she can become a fully realized bodhisattva after she lives that life. She responds very strongly that, quote, only weak-minded worldlings see gender as a barrier to attaining enlightenment, unquote. However, she does acknowledge that there have been very few bodhisattvas who have been born as a woman, and so she resolves to always be reborn as a female bodhisattva as part of her bodhisattva vows. Interestingly, when questioned about gender and sexism in Buddhism, the 14th Dalai Lama referred to this story as the origin of Buddhist feminism. In Japanese Buddhism, Tārā, sometimes called Tārāni, is thought to be one of the 33 forms of Kannon, particularly the explicitly female form, but also sometimes the mother or wife of male Kannon. Tārā has a mantra, which is chanted in practices surrounding her. In Sanskrit, it reads Om Tare Tut Tare Tude Svaha. In Tibetan Buddhism, in the 7th through 11th centuries, it became common to describe benevolent feminine aristocratic figures as incarnations of Tārā, and this led to some of the variety in her iconography that we will discuss in the next question. In Tibet, King Srongpsan Sangpo had 2 wives, the Chinese woman Wancheng and the daughter of Nepal's Amsuvarman Brikruti. Both were each considered to be manifestations of Tārā. To differentiate between the two in iconography, Tibetan iconography uses 2 colors, white for the Chinese wife with a full-blown lotus as her emblem, and green for the Nepalese wife, whose emblem is the blue half-open lotus. In Hinduism, Tārā is often said to be a manifestation of Sarasvati, the consort of Brahma and the goddess of knowledge, education, learning, arts, speech, poetry, music, creativity, purification, language, and culture. In her blue form, Tārā is thought to be the aspect of Sarasvati that possesses and protects esoteric knowledge. Connected to that, she is sometimes thought to be the personification of the entire Atharva Veda, one of the 4 Vedas we've discussed before. We've not talked about this much, but some traditions of Hinduism worship the 4 Vedas in a personified deity form, and Tārā represents one of them.
How is she depicted in iconography, and why?
In Buddhism, we have seen skin color and what tools or implements a figure is holding change according to context and situation. Some variations reflect different aspects or states of being for the figure in question. For example, there are blue and black forms of Fudo Myoho, there are red forms of Amida, and there are red, green, blue, and black forms of Akshobhya. Tārā is no different. The largest list of forms of Tārā describe 22 different forms or manifestations of her, and each one represents Tārā's different aspects or states of her being. The most common and popular depiction of her is Green Tārā, who we mentioned briefly in the previous episode. Green Tārā represents her peaceful and enlightened activity. Other colors include White Tārā, which represents compassion, long life, healing, and serenity. White Tārā is fascinating because in addition to her 2 regular eyes, she has eyes on each of her hands, each of her feet, and one on her forehead, and so she's sometimes called the 7-eyed goddess. There's also Red Tārā, which represents the courageous, powerful, enthralling, and controlling aspect of Tārā. Some scholars think that the name Tārā doesn't necessarily refer to one goddess of many forms, but rather to a category of many different goddesses. One scholar enumerates 22, and so it's up to us to decide if we think they're all different goddesses or different forms of one goddess. The 22 are Swift, Courageous Tārā, who is often red in color and radiates fiery light with 1 face and 2 eyes and 8 arms. Tārā, White like the Autumn Moon, or Brilliant Moon Tārā, who is 3-faced, 12-armed, and white. She has peaceful powers and is particularly known for the pacification of defilement and disease. Then there's Gold-colored Tārā. This is a form of Tārā with 10 arms and specializes in the activity of increasing lifespan, resources, wisdom, etc. Then there's Tārā Crown Jewel the Tathagatas, or Victorious Crown Jewel Tārā. This one is also a gold-colored Tārā, but she has 4 arms, and she represents the protuberance on the Buddha's head. Then there's Tārā Sounding Hum. This one is golden color as well, but has an angry or fierce face, and she's shown stomping her feet in an act that allegedly causes the sound of the syllable hum and reverses the negative influences and delusions, and it draws sentient beings toward the Dharma. Then there's Tārā, Victor over the 3 worlds, which is depicted with red or red-black skin, and this Tārā subdues and controls all deities and spirits, including devas. She purifies obscurations and negativities. Then there's Destroyer Tārā, or Enemy Crusher Tārā. This is a very fierce-looking black Tārā with a wrathful-looking face who holds a sword, and she's known for subduing dark and demonic forces, both external and internal. Then there's Mara Destroyer Tārā. This Tārā is gold-colored as well, and she has a very fierce frown, and she destroys the 4 Maras, which are known as Death, the Defiled Aggregates, the Defilements of Mind, and Mara the Deity. Then there's Tārā of the Kadira Forest. This Tārā is a shining blue-green color, and she holds a blue lotus and appears in a lush forest of very fragrant Kadira trees. Then there's Tārā, Granter of Boons. She's sometimes depicted as red, and she just grants all precious things and grants the Dharma and the treasures therein to all sentient beings. There's Tārā, Dispeller of Sorrow. another red Tārā who fulfills desires and subjugates evil. There's Tārā, magnetizer of all beings. She is depicted as the color of darkness, so you could think maybe a blue-black color, and her power is to increase enjoyments and wealth. There's auspicious light Tārā. She's gold, but she has 8 arms and a crescent moon ornament. She gives off a white light for pacifying negativities and a yellow light for increasing goodness. There's Tārā who ripens all, a red, fierce-looking Tārā depicted amid a cosmic fire. She subdues hindrances and protects from fear and danger. There's furrowed brow Tārā, who, you guessed it, has a furrowed brow, and she has dark skin with 3 very wrathful faces and a necklace of skulls. She's usually shown dancing or trampling on corpses or stamping her feet, and she destroys all things which interfere with the Dharma and the welfare of sentient beings. There's Great Peaceful Tārā, who is a white Tārā with 6 arms, associated with happiness, purification, and pacification of negative karma. There's Tārā, Destroyer of Attachments. She's a beautiful red Tārā holding a trident, which amplifies the power of mantras and removes negative thoughts. There's Tārā who accomplishes bliss. She's orange and she holds a moon disk at her chest, and she's known for eliminating dark magic mantras and for binding thieves. There's White Victorious Tārā. She's white-skinned and known for dispelling disease, in particular leprosy. Then there's Tārā, Consumer of Suffering. This is also a white Tārā who eliminates conflict, nightmares, negative thoughts, and poisons. There's Tārā, Giver of Attainments. She has orange skin and she grants special powers like invisibility, and she can also heal sometimes. And then there's Tārā who perfects all. This is a white Tārā sitting on a bull who can take one to the Pure Land of Akanishta, which is interesting because she's supposed to have this association with Sukhavati or with Amida, but Akanishta is a completely different Pure Land ruled over by a completely different Buddha. Nevertheless, those are the 22 forms of Tārā. There are other depictions of her that are not even covered by this list, speaking to how popular she was and still is in Buddhist worship, and also speaking to how her worship adapts and synthesizes to its unique geographical, historical, or cultural context.
So I'm looking at this list, and I see iconography described that seems like that would match a Hindu goddess that is not Tārā, but matches the description fairly well. In particular, furrowed brow Tārā, wrathful expression, necklace of skulls, shown dancing and stomping. That sounds like Kali to me.
Yes, exactly. And she has this relationship to Kali that we've talked about in the Indian tradition, where she might have the same source, that source being Shakti or Mahadevi. And a lot of the iconographic practices that are used whenever depicting Buddhist deities are often borrowed from these Hindu practices as well. So they all kind of exist in the same doctrinal and religious ecosystem, but also in the same artistic and technical ecosystem when it comes to depicting them. So yeah, she's definitely going to look a lot like Kali for sure.
Yeah, it seems like a situation where if we went back and tried to trace the ancestry of these ideas, the process of creating this list of different Tāras, we would see a really tight overlap with other goddesses from the area.
Definitely, yeah. She has a cult following, you might say, kind of like there have been cults of Amida or cults of Akshobhya. And this cult is interesting in that it does straddle the gap between being expressly and explicitly Buddhist or being Hindu. And the truth is, in history, these distinctions between different religious traditions didn't exist in the forms that we have them today. And so it's very possible that someone could worship Hindu gods and Buddhas and do Hindu rituals and Buddhist ones, and that would form sort of a coherent, singular religious practice and tradition for that person or that community.
We hope you enjoyed this week's discussion about Tārā. Join us next week where we will be discussing Budai, the Laughing Buddha. Who is Budai? What are some stories about him? How is he depicted in iconography and why? We hope to see you there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
If you like our show and want to financially support us, we ask that you instead donate to a worthy cause. This month, we recommend the GoFundMe for Keith Porter. On January 7th, ICE agent and fascist coward Jonathan Ross murdered Renee Good. This event has shocked people into mobilizing against ICE and other fascist forces in the country. While the murder was horrible, the fact that people are mobilizing in response is reassuring. However, ICE agents shooting people is not new. On New Year's Eve, Keith Porter was also murdered. His family, including children, are asking for financial assistance to recover from this tragedy. Renee Good's fundraiser has raised over $1 million, which is an incredible display of solidarity. As of recording, Keith's has about $150,000, which is not nothing, but not what he deserves. Frankly, this is probably because Mr. Porter was a black man. I think we need to show up more for black folks, especially right now. Thus, Nick and I ask that you donate what you would give to us to Mr. Porter's fundraiser instead. As always, thank you for listening. Until next time.
My name is Nick Bright, scholar of East Asian religions and the voice of Hearer.
And I'm Docs, editor, question asker, and voice of Hermit.
And this has been Bright on Buddhism. Thank you for listening. If you like our podcast, or if you have any questions that you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Please consider leaving a comment, review, or subscribing. You can also reach us by email at bright.on.buddhism@gmail.com. As always, citations and resources for this episode can be found in the show notes. Thank you.